Well, after taking a day off yesterday, we are back here on Glasgow Rangers Nation, bringing you all the latest news from Rangers. We've got some bad news, well, possible bad news about another bloody injury. Yes, that's right, another injury. Jesus Christ, will the curse ever break for Rangers? We've also got some discussion around what is going to be Phillipe Clement's future and what are his aspirations in the game. Obviously, yesterday he turned 50 years old. Happy birthday to the gaffer. Only 4 years older than me. Jeez, man, that's a weird one. Anyway, let's start off with news about Ridvan Yilmaz. Now, Ridvan Yilmaz, since Christmas, has really, made that left back spot his own. He has been absolutely outstanding. By far the premier left back at the club. Since he's come into the squad since Christmas and really got his fitness there, he's got his strength there. He's looked one of the best players. And in a number of games, even games when we perhaps haven't performed as well as we could have done, Ridvan has been the one player who's always impressed. Very good going forward, very good in defence. Decent delivery into the box, scored a couple of goals, just been an absolute star. Even people calling him Ridvandinho, Ridvan Carlos, Ridvan Baston, for example, all those different names, comparing him to some pretty great players. Now, Yilmaz was recalled to Vincenzo Montella. Yes, if you might remember him, former Sampdoria and Italy striker Vincenzo Montella's Turkey squad for the friendly clashes that Turkey had this week against Hungary and Austria. Ridvan Yilmaz started against Hungary, but he lasted just 27 minutes into his return for the Turks. It was his 7th cap for Turkey. He has been overlooked in recent weeks, and certainly, his aspiration was to get first-team football, to really impress and try and get in the Turkey squad for the Euros. And it seemed that obviously he had moved up the pecking order in Vincenzo Montella's thoughts for that tournament. However, the fact that he lasted only 27 minutes and was replaced by Fenerbahce's Mert Mulder midway through the first half, he pulled up clutching his left thigh. So it seems that the injury, initial sort of assessment, is his left thigh that he has injured whilst on international duty. Now, this is one of the reasons I really don't like international breaks at this stage of the season, and why I don't like our players going away with their countries, because they then come back injured. This is just genuinely not the news that Phillipe Clement will want about the Turkish international. Rangers return to action against Hibs on Saturday, upcoming on Saturday the 30th, which is next Saturday. We're already without the likes of Abdallah Sima, Oscar Cortez, Ryan Jack, Kieran Dowell, and Danilo for that game. Now, this game could see also Ridvan Yilmaz missing as well, meaning a possible return to the squad for Borna Barisic, which absolutely fills me full of dread, especially given his performance against Kilmarnock when he was hooked at half-time, largely to blame for the cross that led to that Kilmarnock penalty. Borna Barisic is, I think, the one player who really has, not even got a little bit better under Phillipe Clement. Everyone else seems to have improved massively. He's just kind of stood still and gone backwards in some cases. And, we know that he's going to be off at the end of the season, thank God. People obviously said that, criticise me for criticising him. But yes, during that 55 season, he was a very good player. But for the last 2 seasons, he has been an utter disaster. Now, what is more worrying is obviously the fact that upcoming after that Hibs game is the Old Firm game against Celtic at Ibrox, and having Ridvan available for that game is absolutely vital. We need our absolute strongest possible squad. We can't afford any more injuries. We can't afford to be missing any more of our best players. Now, Ridvan has been by far one of our best players since Christmas, along with the likes of John Lundstrom, for example, Jack Butland, who continues to impress. These players have really stood up and really impressed in the last few weeks, and Ridvan has been one of them. And we need Ridvan for that Old Firm game. the thoughts of going into the Old Firm game with Borna Barisic at left backs absolutely terrifies me. It really does. Especially given his previous surrenders and poor performances against that lot. And he is one of the ones that does seem to have still this loser mentality against that lot, and it's something we cannot afford to have in that game, in what is really an absolute must-win game. Ridvan has really impressed. Obviously that great goal that he got against Hibs at Easter Road, lovely ball lofted over the top by John Lundstrom, great first-time volley from Ridvan into the back of the net. Obviously that also comes on top of the goal that he got against Livy. He's had a very successful season so far. He played twice in the Europa League. Obviously, wasn't included in the Europa League squad for the group stages, in the infinite wisdom of that coaching genius, Michael Beale. Scottish Premier League this season, he's played 22 games. He has 1 goal and 1 assist. Scottish League Cup this season, 1 goal, 1 assist. And played also twice in the Champions League. It's really since Christmas that he's come into his own and really stood up and being noticed as one of our best players. And like I said, we really cannot afford for this to be a long-term injury. Certainly is to be hoped that when he's assessed by Turkey's medical staff, and then if he's sent back to Auchenhowie to Ibrox as well to be assessed by Rangers medical staff, that this injury is not as bad as it first seems. It's happened before. Obviously, Abdallah went off with his country, went down clutching a muscle, comes back, is out long term. That's the problem with these muscle injuries. Until you actually get the swelling down, actually assess them, and actually look at them and X-ray them, and genuinely examine them, there is kind of an uncertainty there as to how long he will be missing for. And it would just seem to follow Rangers' luck, wouldn't it, that he comes back, he's outstanding and then gets injured and misses the rest of the season or something like that. And it does genuinely fill me full of fear and dread having Borna Barisic at left back. It really does. I would rather play Dujon Sterling there, and that takes away out of his midfield role, or even move Ben Davies to left back, or even start John Lee Yefeko, any of those people over Borna Barisic, who is just an absolute bomb scare at this moment in time. So really genuinely worrying news for me about Ridvan Yilmaz. Now let's move on and talk about our 50-year-old gaffer, Mr. Phillipe Clement. I don't think anybody, I'll disclude them because they're a bunch of idiots that lot across the city. But the vast majority of Scottish football fans, fans all across Britain, fans in Europe, I think if they sit down, objectively look at it, can genuinely see what an absolutely amazing job this man has done since he came to Ibrox. He has really genuinely turned things around for the club. If you go back to that defeat against Aberdeen at Ibrox, when the game before Michael Beale lost his job, you really would have seen a lot of Rangers fans and obviously the Rangers players, I think, completely lost. Poor mentality, no tactics, no shape, no identity, no vision. Just a genuinely dreadful team that would have, I honestly think, been fighting with hearts for second place. That's how bad Michael Beale's team was. But Phillipe Clement has come in. He has installed a real sense of belief in this team, a real sense of identity, a real sense of team, a real sense of purpose, a clear vision in how he wants to play football. All the players know what is expected of them when they go out there, and he's someone who isn't afraid to let players know what he's thinking. He's not afraid to make substitutions. He isn't predictable with his substitutions like Michael Beale. He is absolutely outstanding. He really is genuinely brilliant with what he does. Now, his record at Rangers to this point, is pretty damned good. Scottish Premier League, he's had 21 matches in charge. He's won 18 of them, drawn 1, lost 2. Obviously, the 2 defeats coming against that lot and against Motherwell in that shock defeat at Ibrox, averaging 2.62 points per game, which is pretty incredible. In the Europa League, he's managed 6 games, winning 2, drawing 3, and losing 1. He just absolutely brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Across his entire time with Rangers, 32 games, 25 victories, 4 draws, 3 defeats. That other defeat coming against Benfica, averaging 2.47 points per game if you break it down to a 3-point per game basis. But, you know, 25 out of 35 games won is just, you know, an excellent start for any manager, and a really good performance by Phillipe Clement. That's a 71% win ratio, which is absolutely excellent. Now, one of the coaches who formerly worked with Phillipe Clement at Genk, you know, has said that basically Rangers fans ain't seen nothing yet out of the big Belgian, and said that, you know, that he will go on to even greater levels of brilliance at Ibrox and possibly somewhere else in the future. He, you know, he talked about the fact that for Phillipe Clement, that Ibrox will not be his final destination, and unfortunately, I can kind of see that he will not always be here. Look, don't get me wrong, Rangers are a massive European club. We are genuinely one of the biggest clubs in world football, but the issue we have is, number one, the finances, that we don't generate the income and we don't generate the TV deals and the money through that clubs in other leagues, other big leagues around Europe do generate. You know, I mean, if you look at revenue turnover, Rangers revenue turnover last year was 83.8 million. Even if you take a top 10, top 12 English Premier League team like Brighton, for example, you know, Brighton, I think, turn over 163 to 170 million pounds a year. You know, it's just vastly different, and that's a much, much, much smaller team. And that's what we're battling with. That's the finances we're kind of battling against if we want to retain our best players and our best managers and ward off talent to spotters sniffing from south of the border. The guy who was talking about, you know, about Phillipe Clement is a former coach, an assistant manager when he was at Genk, a guy called Eric Gerets. You know, he said that Clement is just a football monster. He is someone who thinks, sleeps, eats, drinks, talks, nothing else but football. You know, it's his everything. You know, he always thinks this way. You know, Gerets is someone who knew Clement as a footballer as well, and was just so impressed with him. And he says, I've always liked Phillipe as a footballer and a coach, but most of all as a man. What's the saying in English? You ain't seen nothing yet. Well, I would say to Rangers fans, he ain't finished yet, because there's a lot more from Phillipe in his career. He's just 50, and that's still young. He will have ambitions to coach, even though it's been going well at Rangers since he moved to Scotland. And, you know, Gerets is appearing to suggest, and I think rightly so, that this is not the ceiling of his ambition. You know, that he will want to go on and retain titles, retain cups, win titles in Scotland. That's what he is. That's what he does. You know, he doesn't just win one title. He's not a manager who comes in, flashes, wins one, and then that's it. He's a manager who wins multiple titles for his teams. You know, look at Genk, for example, who did win multiple titles under Phillipe Clement. However, Eric Gerets suggests, though, that the SPL and Rangers will not be the final stopping point for the big Belgian. You know, he suggests that Big Phil will be eventually tempted to attempt to try his skill and his management ability and coaching ability in the English Premier League, obviously, which is, you know, the biggest competition in world football. And look, like I've just said, you know, I would love Big Phil to stay at Rangers forevermore. Of course I would. You know, the guy's just amazing. He's absolutely amazing. He's just brilliant. And I love him to bits for what he's done for my club and our club. But, you know, he is an ambitious man. He's someone who wants to test himself at lots of different levels. And I can see him somewhere down the line, not in this short term. I think we're looking at the next 3 to 5 years, you know, wanting to test himself down there. You know, we saw with Ange Postecoglou at Celtic, you know, the guy came in, flashed for 2 seasons, and now he's at Tottenham and doing a fairly decent job down there. I can see Clement following a similar sort of pathway to Ange, you know, perhaps 2-3 seasons at Ibrox and then going down south and manage one of the top 10 teams in England. I think, you know, that is a realistic ambition for this guy. He is that good a coach. You know, like I said, I think he has so much to offer as a manager, and that's something that Gerets, you know, backs up, having worked with Clement and seeing the wisdom that he has, seeing the knowledge that he has, seeing, you know, his way of communicating with players. And he talked as well about the fact that, you know, Big Phil does get angry with players at times. He says it's not very often, but when he does, it has meaning and it has impact. that he will lose his rag, kick arses when he needs to. And that's what this team needs occasionally, I do think, when we turn in one of those laboured, passive passing, slow moving first half displays, he needs to get into the opposition, get into our players and let them know that what they produced in that first half is, in his estimations, not acceptable. And I think that he has done that on a few occasions this season. But it's good to hear people talking so positively about Big Phil and how that he will continue to have an impact and how he will continue to develop and improve at Rangers. And look, I do realistically think eventually he will have aspirations to go and manage down south. Well, guys, let me know what you think of the two stories we've covered in this morning's video. It is a Saturday. There is no real football today, unfortunately. So, we just got to get through, haven't we, until next Saturday when we face Hibs. Game live stream here on the channel. Remember, look out for that. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. And as always, if you can do me a few favours. Number one is obviously to sub to the channel. It helps the channel to grow. Number two, on the way out, smash the likes. Likes help videos to grow. And number three, the most important of all, please never forget, ever forget, we are the people.